When it comes to finding places to stay while traveling, there are tons of options. Some people prefer hotels, Airbnbs, or glamping. But if you're watching this video right now, I'd be willing to bet one of two things. You're either a budget-conscious traveler, or you much prefer being outdoors. If either or both of those things are true, then you've come to the right video. In my travels around the United States both before and after building out my van, I've learned that oftentimes the best way to experience a place isn't tucked away in a hotel, but among the place itself. So whether you're looking to discover gems off the beaten path, or simply looking for somewhere to crash on those in-between days, there are many tools I use on a daily basis and things I've learned from experience that I would like to share with you now. Okay, so before we get started talking about the ways that I find existing spots and where you can scout out new ones, I want to take a moment to talk about, no, it's not our sponsor, it's leave no trace principles. You know, especially after COVID, more and more people are getting outside, and I think that that's amazing. You know, people can't really care about something that they haven't experienced. So, yay, people are going outside, but that also means that there's more impact. And almost everything that we do, except for, no, even breathing, everything that we do has an impact on the environment in one way or another. And especially when you're out in, you know, beautiful, pristine, natural places like this, we want to minimize that as much as possible. That means, you know, leaving your trash there. That means abiding by the local regulations. That means not dumping things. And that means doing better than the neighbors that I had last night who were out here shooting clay pigeons, doing donuts in the meadow, ripping up the plants, letting all the trash float out of their campsite so that I could walk past and pick it up for them. Leave it better than you found it. You know, if there's stuff there, pick it up. Let's make it look like we were never here. All right, so now back to the fun stuff. Where are the different kinds of campsites that you can get for free? Well, as far as I'm concerned, there's two different categories. There is dispersed camping, and then there's everything else. So dispersed camping is basically any time you're camped legally in the wilderness, but outside of an established campground. This means that there are usually no amenities, like there's no water, no trash service. That also means that there's usually less neighbors and there's no fees. Now everything else is kind of the umbrella term that I'm gonna go with for all the stuff in between, you know, like stealth camping, Walmart parking lots, rest stops, and we'll get into a little bit more detail about those in a moment, but they're usually not tent friendly. They usually require a little bit more discretion, and I don't know, they're sometimes necessary when you're traveling between destinations. Both are good, but let's talk a little bit about dispersed camping. Dispersed camping is pretty much my favorite way to camp. It gets you out in places like this, untouched wilderness that, you know, there's less rules, there's less people, there's, I don't know, it's less structured. It's really nice. And that also means that, you know, you don't really need to have any reservations. There's much less preparation that goes into coming to public lands than, I don't know, visiting Yosemite or something like that. So just because you're dispersed camping doesn't mean that you can do it anywhere, and it doesn't mean you can do it on any public lands. You need to do it on public lands that allow it. These are lands like national forests or Bureau of Land Management lands in the United States, at least. Basically, these are public lands that are collectively owned by the citizens of the United States and managed by the government. You pay for them with your tax dollars, you pay for their preservation and their maintenance, and you're allowed to stay on them. Usually there's a 14-day stay limit to discourage people from moving in and to protect and preserve these natural areas. But yeah, there's not really much to it. As long as you know where you're going, you're pretty much allowed to stay there. There'll be signs if you're not allowed to. But just because there's no reservations required doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your due diligence. You should always check the National Forest or Bureau of Land Management website for the area you're going for special alerts just in case of fires or road closures or extenuating circumstances. You can always call the local ranger's office. They're always happy to help. Talking about dispersed camping is pretty easy because the same rules and information apply for basically the whole category. But everything else, well, we need to break that down into subcategories. So we're gonna go in order of the most simple, easy, and accepting of you being there, down. And that first one would be rest stops. They're usually right off the freeway. They've got bathrooms, they've got water, they've got places for you to throw away your trash, and you're allowed to stay there for up to 8 hours. But in my experience, you know, pass out for as long as you need to, wake up, make some coffee, take your time getting ready, and then get on the road. As long as you're not loitering there all day, no one's gonna pay you any mind. Truck stops offer a lot of the same conveniences, and you know, they're strategically positioned like little oases along the freeways, and they allow truckers to stay there overnight and sleep in their vehicles. But it's a lesser known fact that they also extend that same courtesy to travelers. One night I was camped on, I don't know, public land somewhere in Central Oregon, and I was getting ready to go to sleep, and I was getting these really sketchy vibes from this truck that kept driving past me. And I'm out in the boonies, all alone, just me, and it felt like he was scoping me out, seeing if I was alone, and I don't know, I wasn't really trying to find out, so I got out of there, I hit the road, I drove out of the public land and hit the freeway, and I was like, where am I gonna find a place to stay at this time of night? And a couple miles down the road, truck stop, and I pull over and I see that there are campers in there and people with, you know, shields on their windshields, obviously shields on their windows, obviously sleeping in their vehicles. So I pulled in and double checked with the gas station attendant to see if I could pass out there, and they're like, yeah, of course. Passed out, got a great night's sleep, woke up, and you know, something that's an unexpected perk of a truck stop is that they have really great showers. I woke up, I took my best shower in like, I don't know, like a week and a half. They're impeccably clean. Like, they make your bathroom at home look dingy and dirty. It's kind of shocking. And they have better convenience stores than regular gas stations. I don't know. Truck stops are underrated and underutilized, so definitely check them out. Whether this is entirely factual or not, it's pretty common knowledge that stores like Walmart allow you to stay in their parking lots overnight. Now, this isn't entirely true because it varies on a store-by-store basis, but I gotta say, I've stayed in my fair share of store parking lots, and it's not bad. I mean, there's obviously not the amenities that you have with a rest stop or a truck stop. You can use the store's bathrooms if you need to, and you're usually in the city, but there is a sort of odd sense of security you get from being in a parking lot with a bunch of other RVs, vans, and overlanding rigs. And I mean, I don't know, it's not great, but it's not terrible. But just make sure that you're not assuming that it's okay to stay there, because that's a pretty surefire way of getting a citation or the dreaded midnight knock. So when in doubt, ask the manager, and oftentimes if the answer is no, they'll know of somewhere that you can stay. So it's a loss, but it's a win. So for the last 3 spots I mentioned, there's kind of this acceptance of you being there. With stealth camping, there is no such thing, which is probably why it's my least favorite option. You know, I like being able to kick back and relax and not be looking over my shoulder or hiding behind closed curtains in the evening, but sometimes there's no better option. Now, these spots could be anywhere from a residential neighborhood to the side of a road somewhere. They come in all shapes and sizes, but really you just need to approach them with awareness, respect, and discretion. You know, being discreet is of the utmost importance, and that's something that can be kind of hard depending on the vehicle that you're in. Unassuming vans and cars are probably the least suspicious, and then everything else gets more suspicious the larger, more outwardly outdoorsy or especially junky it gets. Now, these aren't places that you want to be hanging out. Best practice is to get in late when you're ready to pass out, wake up, and then get out of there. Especially if you're in a residential neighborhood. You really don't want to be drawing attention to yourself. Don't be sitting there with your doors open, washing dishes, listening to music. Make it hard to notice that you were ever even there. So now that we've talked about all of the options available to you, we can talk about resources for finding these places. Now there's a whole lot of different apps, databases, websites, you name it, out there for finding these places. Way more than I could cover in one video, but that's okay because I don't have to. There's really only 3 that I use with any sort of regularity, and the first one is iOverlander. iOverlander is a staple. It's an online crowdsourced database of different stealth camping spots, boondocking spots, dispersed camping spots, hostels, gas fill-ups, propane fill-ups, you name it. If it has to do with traveling on the road, it's probably on there somewhere. I use it the most because I find it's the easiest to use and it's the one that I have the most success with. Now, because it's crowdsourced, there's often a wide variety of spots from, beautiful wild dispersed camping to slanted turnoffs on the side of the 101. And I also really like that because it is user submitted, that there's reviews and photos, and the whole thing works offline, except you do need internet to load the photos. And then there's All Stays. I don't use this one as much, but not because it's not good, it's just different. It's really good for seeing a map of all the different truck stops and rest stops in an area, which is primarily what I use it for. But it does have some good other pins throughout. It's just not crowdsourced like iOverlander, so there's less variety there. It is also a paid app, but it's a one-time purchase of $10. And last but certainly not least is an app that I just started using recently after much prompting from my friends and from people that I met on the road, Onyx Off-Road. Onyx was originally created as a hunting app that allowed hunters to save maps offline and view land boundaries when they were out in the wilderness. But Onyx has since diversified to include a backcountry and an off-roading version of their service. Now, I was pretty skeptical of the $30 yearly subscription price for the Pro membership, but after having it recommended to me so many times, I gave it a shot, and I can say that it's well worth the money. Now, the value that I see in it is that it empowers me with tools that I need to scout out my own spots. Now, map services like Google and Apple don't have good off-road maps. They just don't, but Onyx does. So now you can see the area's maps for off-roading, filter by the type of off-roading that you're willing to do. And then when you combine that with the ability to view it in satellite view, save the maps offline, use it as a bit of a navigation, and see the land boundaries so that you know whether or not you're properly camped on public land or not. There's no other service that I'm aware of that does what it does. And if it yields me one good spot a year, then that's probably worth the $30 to me. All right, so I find myself on the road today, which you can probably tell because of all of the loud trucks going past. And I'm driving through some public land and thought that this might be an ideal time to show you how you might be able to use Onyx to find some spots that are not on any of these other services and a little bit more off the beaten path. All right, so we're inside of Onyx right now, and right away we're greeted with this blotchy colored map that shows us public land boundaries. So we can see that there's some Bureau land management land around the city of La Pine. We can see that there's a state forest, there's a national forest, and that's really cool because you can avail yourself of all these public lands as long as you know where they are. But the thing that I think is really cool about this is that it shows you a map of all of the off-road trails. So if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that there is this web that it shows us now. And we can actually filter by the kind of off-roading we're willing to do. So I don't have a dirt bike, I don't have an ATV, but I do have something that can handle full width roads for sure, and some high clearance 4x4 stuff. So now we can see that all of those routes are highlighted. And for the sake of saving time here, I've actually already gone in and flagged a couple of potential spots. And basically all I did to do that was I switched over to the 3D version, and you can see that along some of these roads, there's actually a few little clearings in the trees that looks like some camping may or may not have been done at before. I hope that came out right. So all of these look like they're pretty solid, decent spots secluded in the trees, not public campgrounds, but public land that you can go to if you want to get a little slice of nature. But the one that I think is curious or intriguing to me is this one up here. It looks like it's got a pretty big area of land. It's not too far off the highway, and I think it's a prime candidate. So we've identified it as a potential winner, but really there's only one way to know for sure. right, so it looks like it should be just up here on the left. This looks like it. Not too bad, right? We're out in the middle of the forest. The air is clean. And I think that we're the only ones out here, to be quite honest. I was definitely leaving some fresh tracks in that snow out there. And getting out into nature and away from society and all of our modern things that we do on a daily basis is really why I wanted to make this video. And to give you the tools and knowledge to have these experiences for yourself and to save a little bit of money doing so, because that's important too. But in making this video, I was a little bit conflicted because by inviting people further into the wilderness, you're inevitably also inviting a certain amount of abuse along with it. And that's something that I'm pretty concerned about. So it's at this point in the video that I'd like to ask you a favor. No, I'm not asking for financial compensation, for your social security number, or for you to subscribe to my OnlyFans. I'm just asking that, if you find yourself out in a new place, out in nature, or really anywhere, using the knowledge and tools that you got from this video, it would really mean a lot to me if you would approach these places with a sense of respect, because so many people don't. And as much as these places might just seem like patches of dirt, thickets of trees, and strips of uneven pavement, ultimately, they're all connected to Mother Earth. And without her, we wouldn't even be here. So it's my personal belief that, in exchange for living on this paradise and playground of a planet, that we owe her a debt. To pick up trash in these places, to not contribute to it in the first place, to leave these places better than you found them, and to respect them and venerate them and cherish them for the magic and the majesty that they are. Because, it might not seem like we as individuals have much impact on the planet in the grand scheme of things, but a few hundred years ago, the west coast of the United States, there was no litter, there was no pollution. Places were just like this. They just were, as Earth intended them to be. And nowadays, as a species, we have spread across this planet like mold on a fruit. And if the past few decades have taught us anything, it's that what we're doing isn't working. Now, I didn't mean to take this video on such a 90-degree pessimistic turn. I do really think that it's important that we get out and experience these places and have fun doing so. And I think the world will be a better place if we all do. But I just want you to know that your actions, however small they might seem, matter. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And I'm not actually staying here tonight. Remember, this was just for demonstrations purposes. I'm gonna keep going now.